Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are jumping into just a fascinating case study of disruption of resilience and scale. We're looking at the story of MTN Mobile Money MoMo and how a telecom operator basically became one of the world's most significant, if quiet, financial institutions. So our mission today for you is to give you a shortcut. We want to cut through all the noise and really show you the blueprint, the specific tech, the strategy, and the human innovations that let Momo redefine cashless economies in Africa. And here's the core idea of this dive, really. MTN Momo popped up in markets that, global banking execs had often just dismissed. They saw limited infrastructure, low financial literacy, and, well, not much profit. But MTN proved innovation is often strongest when it's driven by absolute necessity.
Right. And what's so compelling is the narrative arc. The idea was, by many accounts, almost accidental at first. It was born from a practical need to manage airtime distribution more efficiently. It was utility. But the adoption, this rapid grassroots adoption by millions, turned it into this intensely strategic focus. It wasn't mandated from the top. It was demanded from the bottom up.
Okay, let's unpack that necessity. We have to start with the real-world problem MTN was trying to solve when they launched mobile money around, 2009? For millions of people, financial infrastructure was just a nightmare. What were the friction points?
Well, think about the daily reality. For an informal worker or a farmer, the nearest bank branch could be a full day's travel. So it's prohibitively expensive, it's time-consuming just to deposit or withdraw cash. And the services that were offered, often way too costly for low-income users. The whole system just ran on physical cash, and cash is so risky, it gets stolen, it's hard to save, you can't track it.
So the problem wasn't a lack of money necessarily, it was a lack of a safe, convenient system to move and store that money.
Exactly. And this is where the genius of the simple mobile phone idea comes in. In a lot of MTN's countries, mobile phone penetration was just skyrocketing, even as banking was stagnant. Momo leveraged that. And critically, they used USSD technology. For you, the listener, USSD is that simple code, like 121 one tag you use to check your balance.
And why was USSD the secret sauce here? Why not just use apps or SMS?
Because USSD works on any feature phone. You don't need a smartphone, you don't need mobile data, you don't even need to be super literate in banking terms. It's text-based, it's universal. It turned the cheapest, most basic phone into a secure financial terminal instantly.
Yeah, you immediately think of M-Pesa's early success in Kenya, which kind of set the global standard. But MTN wasn't a single country operation. They were expanding across dozens of markets. That's a whole different level of complexity, right?
Oh, absolutely. M-Pesa perfected a deep ecosystem in one market. MTN had this huge challenge of rapid pan-regional expansion. You're talking different regulators, different currencies, totally different economic realities. What worked with the Bank of Ghana might need a completely different setup in Uganda. So they had to build this adaptive, flexible system. It was basically a massive decentralized financial network before that was really a thing.
So they solved the tech problem, the universal interface. But digital money still needs physical arteries. You can't build a digital economy if people can't get cash into the system. And this brings us to the agent network, the human element.
This is maybe the greatest non-technical innovation. Instead of spending billions on traditional bank branches, which would only be in the cities anyway,
Right.
MTN empowered ordinary businesses.
We're talking about the local corner shop, right? The neighborhood hubs.
Precisely. Grocery stores, kiosks, fuel stations. These existing local businesses were onboarded, they were trained, and they were given float the digital cash they need to operate. They became instant, decentralized financial access points, open 7 days a week, often late into the night, even in remote villages. They were monetizing trust that was already there.
And the genius there is it wasn't just providing access, it was also an economic development tool for the agents themselves. It's a whole new revenue stream.
Exactly. The scale is just staggering. In many countries, MTN's mobile money agents outnumbered traditional bank branches by 10, 12, sometimes 20 to 1. They achieved a density that traditional finance had just dismissed as impossible. They outsourced the last mile of banking.
And we have seen similar models like bKash in Bangladesh or OVO in Indonesia, but MTN's speed. Their speed across multiple large markets at once really set them apart. Okay, so that speed and density built trust, it built liquidity. But if Momo had just stayed a simple transfer system, we wouldn't be talking about it today. It evolved. It became a full financial ecosystem. What were some of those first use cases that proved it was more than a wallet?
The moment people trusted the system to hold their money, their financial lives just moved on to it. We saw people paying utility bills, electricity, water digitally for the first time. Schools started accepting tuition through Momo. which was huge for security. Parents weren't carrying big bundles of cash anymore. Savings groups, JAMAs, they digitize their contributions. More transparent, more secure.
And for small businesses, this must have been revolutionary for day-to-day operations.
Completely. Small businesses started using it to pay suppliers, manage their cash flow, track sales. It moves so much economic activity out of the risky, informal cash economy and into a secure, traceable system, almost overnight. We also saw these key government partnerships. Governments realized how efficient this was, so they partnered with MTN to distribute welfare payments, emergency relief, subsidies, especially during crises where physical distribution was just too risky. It's very similar to how India uses its Aadhaar system, or how the Philippines use GCash for emergency support. MTN provided that mechanism for immediate financial relief.
This all sounds like a stepping stone into real financial inclusion, which has to include credit. You mentioned alternative credit scoring. This is where the telco data becomes gold, right?
This is where the magic happens. And it's probably the most important feature for, breaking the poverty cycle. For millions of unbanked people, the reason they can't get a loan isn't that they're a bad risk, it's that they have no credit history. A bank knows nothing about them. So MTN used the data they did have. They looked at things like how consistently you top up your airtime, your transaction frequency, the average size of your transfers. They used all this to build these proprietary algorithmic credit scoring models.
So if I consistently top up my phone and send money to my family every week, that consistency signals that I'm reliable, even if I don't have a formal salary.
Precisely. That reliability becomes a financial identity. And that identity allowed MTN, sometimes partnering with banks, to offer microloans and savings products. Small, accessible credit for immediate needs.
Yeah.
Fixing a pump, paying school fees, buying farming inputs. It was like the next evolution of microcredit, but digitized and automated.
Right.
Building this kind of ecosystem, credit, welfare payments, billions of dollars in volume, that requires immense back-end infrastructure. MTN wasn't just managing phone calls anymore. They were operating like a full-blown payments company, like a Stripe or an Adyen.
Absolutely. They had to integrate with national payment switches, the core infrastructure that connects all the banks, plus regional systems, cross-border remittance corridors, and that's complicated enough in a stable economy. But in their markets, they had huge operational constraints.
Which raises the big question. How do you run a reliable 24/7 financial network when the underlying infrastructure, like the power grid, is unreliable?
That's the operational genius. MTN had to design and invest in layers and layers of redundancy. They couldn't just rely on the national grid. So that meant installing battery banks, solar arrays, robust generators at thousands of sites. They had to build fallback systems to make sure that even during a blackout, the core transaction engine was still running. The engineering discipline was just top tier.
They also had to deal with regulators. As mobile money got bigger, so did the scrutiny.
That's right. Regulators saw how systemically important MoMo was becoming, so they strengthened the rules around fraud, money laundering, consumer protection. MTN responded by investing massively in compliance. KYC protocols. Know people are your customer anti-fraud analytics, transaction monitoring. They brought their standards much closer to what European fintechs face.
Wait, let's pause on that. You mentioned European fintechs. You said PSD2 in the notes. For our listener who might not be deep into that, what does that comparison tell us?
Good point. So PSD2 is Europe's big payment directive. It mandates really strict standards for security, transparency, data sharing. It's the cornerstone of open banking. By mirroring that level of stringency, MTN was signaling that they weren't just a telco playing with money. They were a serious financial actor committed to protecting customer assets. That was vital for trust.
Okay, let's pivot to merchant payments. How did MoMo tackle the point of sale? We know QR codes took off in places like China, but MTN couldn't just rely on smartphones.
So they innovated for the local reality. They created these hybrid payment systems called MoMoPay. Yes, it used QR codes for users with smartphones. But crucially, it also had a parallel system where a cashier could initiate a payment prompt, and the customer would confirm it using USSD codes on their basic feature phone. It just maximized inclusion.
And what about money coming from outside the country? Remittances are a huge part of the economy.
Essential. MTN integrated with international remittance corridors, letting the diaspora in Europe or the US send money directly into a MoMo wallet. This just slashed the fees, and the friction of traditional wire transfers was a massive economic benefit. And domestically, they also pushed for interoperability building systems, so a MoMo user could send money to someone on a competitor's service. That kind of move, it mirrored the functionality of India's UPI, which is celebrated globally now. MTN was innovating towards that years ago.
So we've tracked this journey from utility to financial service to full banking competitor. The final stage is the platform itself. MTN moved beyond being a product and became a digital economy engine by offering MoMo APIs. That's a huge shift. By opening up those APIs, the hooks that let other software talk to MoMo, they let developers and startups plug right in.
Exactly. Entrepreneurs could build entire apps for specific industries, say agricultural trading, that relied on Momo for payments.
Mhm.
E-commerce and ride-hailing platforms adopted it as a standard payment method. This platform approach is similar to what Safaricom did with M-Pesa or what Mercado Pago built in Latin America, but MTN's huge, stable, cross-country footprint gives it this unique advantage.
Let's talk about the sheer scale now. Give us the metrics that capture the impact.
The numbers are just astonishing. Today, MTN Mobile Money has well over 60 million active users. It's processing billions of dollars in transactions every month. Their agent network surpassed 1 million access points a long time ago. But maybe the most powerful indicator is the penetration level. In some of their markets, mobile money now represents over half of the country's entire GDP transaction volume. It's become essential infrastructure, which is why MTN is now making this move to spin off Momo as a standalone business separate from the telco to attract fintech-specific investment.
That is just an incredible level of economic influence. If we bring this back to the big picture, the legacy of Momo is profound. It's not just a business success story.
No, the legacy is behavioral. Momo fundamentally changed how people store value, how they transact, how they save, how they get funding to grow a business. It cut the reliance on risky cash, and it accelerated digital transformation for millions of people who, let's be honest, the traditional banking system had just failed to serve.
So what does this all mean for you? MTN's story shows pretty definitively that the Global South isn't just following the fintech narrative, it's actively shaping it, driven by ingenious solutions to real needs. Innovation just thrives where the need is greatest. And this leads us to our final provocative thought for you to explore. Since MTN successfully used overlooked mobile and transaction data to build alternative credit scores for millions of people, what overlooked datasets in currently underserved sectors could be leveraged next? Could it be payment consistency for recurring bills, professional licensing records, maybe even data from decentralized ledgers? Where is the next data revolution that democratizes financial access? That's something worth exploring.